All right, welcome back to Solitude Origins podcast. And we have John Perez, Steve Moseley, Kurt Joye. And today we're going to talk about stories from the road.
Road stories.
Yeah.
Road stories.
Good subject. You know, there's always plenty of road stories. Gosh, you know, where do you start? You know, people have asked over the years, you know, what happened here and how come and why and all that stuff. There was one time in particular, I had just started playing with Solitude. This was, you know, probably 98 or so, 97, or thereabouts. I'm not sure. We went, we had gone over to Germany. And I think it was the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, John, that we had been greeted by the folks at Massacre Records there in Germany.
That's right. We arrived and there was a Massacre's rep.
Yeah. So we were looking forward to meeting those folks, and we had I don't know if you want to call it a series of unfortunate events, but it started with us, you know, getting through the check-in and picking up our luggage and things like that. We had you know, carry-on items and of course, you know, check-in stuff, you know, guitars and heads and, you know, all other manner of guitar gear and stuff like that. One of the things that we didn't check in were pedal boards, and for those of you that aren't familiar, a lot of times guitar players will have a multitude of different pedals or foot controllers that provide different effects and things like that for the guitar. Edgar Rivera was with us and had a pretty extensive pedal board. As a matter of fact, you can listen to some of the amazing sounds that he was able to get from that on the Adagio album. That was pretty much the similar setup that he used at that time on that album. So it consisted of a variety of different pedals. Those pedals are interconnected with these small patch cables. And it was, you know, not out of the ordinary, you know, pretty common for that type of thing. They're all attached to this board and they're in a case, and it's all specific for that arrangement of the pedals. And it sounds, you know, pretty straightforward and interesting until you see it in the X-ray machine going through the customs thing, and it looks like
A bomb.
a bomb. It looks like all these components in the X-ray wired together to these, like, you know, all this stuff. You know, you can't tell what it is other than it's electronic devices that are interconnected, and it looks pretty suspicious.
About the size of a bomb.
Yeah,
This one,
it's
he's
about
got
the
a little-
size
So
of a
we're all
bomb.
hanging out. We're, you know, just like right now, you know, we're just kind of, you know, passing the time, you know, waiting for our gear to come through the thingy and stuff, you know. And we look over, and the people looking at the screen there, you know, their eyes get kind of big, and they're kind of looking at each other, and they're looking at us, and then they're looking back down at the screen and looking at the, you know, next thing you know, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, what's going on? What did they find? Somebody put something in our luggage? You know, that's the first thing I'm thinking. You know, we didn't bring anything that you're not supposed to bring. And of course, they kind of proceeded to pretend that they don't speak enough English, when in actuality they did. And they kind of contained us, and well, long story short, you know, they figured out that it wasn't a bomb and all that. But they became pretty suspicious of us, you know, after that. And actually, just, I guess, wanting to make sure everything else was okay. So they decided to go through all of our.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was using smokeless tobacco. So I had a can of Copenhagen, you know, small little can of tobacco. And opening the cans of Copenhagen, thinking we were smuggling, I don't know, whatever, some type of drug or something like that. None of us did drugs, which kind of segues into the next little story, where we're outside. All of our luggage is on the ground, and they got everything open, and they're looking for something that they're not finding. And we're like, look, we don't do drugs. We don't have any drugs. We didn't bring any drugs. There's no drugs. You know, we're just, you know, and they're pretending like they don't understand us. In the meantime, there was what, 10, 12, 18-year-olds with automatic weapons surrounding us, which is pretty common there in that part of Germany. You know, security detail or whatever, you know, it was pretty intimidating for us. And lo and behold, the people from Massacre come to greet us. And I don't remember the individual's name, and even if I did, I wouldn't mention it now because of the next part of the story. At that time, the individuals from Master Records came to greet us, and we're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "What's going on? Why you guys stuff is all out? How come there's a security detail going through all your belongings, and everything? We need to get you guys on the little shuttle and get you, off to wherever it is we're going, to the hotel or warm up for a show or whatever we're doing." Anyway, their objective was to pick us up, introduce us, and get us on the road. Well, because they were immediately associated with us, all the security and officers and young folks with automatic weapons managed to actually bring them in as suspects as well. So they begin searching them because of their limited association with us. And what did they find? The nice guy there at the label was just really thinking ahead and wanted to make a good impression. So he brought us some very nice tie stick of some premium weed and marijuana, for those of you that. And none of us were doing any drugs. We're like, oh man, but it didn't matter. In that area of Germany, it was kind of a big deal. You're not supposed to do that. And so they immediately threw him in the
Police car, and he was gone.
And he was gone.
And so we didn't have a ride to
There
go
was a
anywhere.
And all this other half stuff happened before that, right? Right before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
goodness.
So now our ride's gone. So we're sitting there hanging out, wondering, what in the hell, it was like an hour and a half or so later. The dude comes back and he's like, "Oh, it's no big deal. They took the weed though. Sorry about that." Or no, they didn't.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Anyway,
You got arrested.
that's right. They didn't. He goes, "Yeah, they didn't take the weed, but they had to document, what was going on and make sure that he wasn't distributing." And it's not nearly as big a deal as it is here in the buckle of the Bible Belt of Texas. But suffice to say that he was put on record for that, I guess possessing that amount or that quantity or whatever, and they just want to monitor and make sure everything's all right. But they didn't confiscate the marijuana. So he comes back and says, "Man, guys, sorry about that. It's their policy here in Germany, in this area, to document those things and make sure everybody's safe and we're not distributing and so on and so forth. But I saved the weed, got this for you guys." And we're like, we don't do that. We don't do any drugs. And he's like, "What? What do you mean? I just went to jail for you guys. What? I brought this for you guys. You guys don't even." We're like, "No, we don't."
Yeah, he kind of got.
He was like, "Oh man."
He got shafted that day.
He got
man.
shafted
He got
that
blasted.
day,
I felt
man.
bad for him.
It
Another
was
great
right.
story that involves us touring overseas when you were with us in the band too. We went and did a series of dates, split up between Germany, Greece, as a matter of fact, was part of those, and Italy. We went to, and this is kind of funny, dude, because I didn't tell you this, but I met the guy that this pertains to in Houston about 2 months ago when I was doing the camp. Dude, I'll tell you this. It's probably only interesting to me and Steve, but anyway, when we went and played these series of gigs over there, we got picked up by the guys. We flew down to Italy and got picked up at the airport by these two guys, really nice dudes. And
Really cool guys.
Yeah, very cool guys. And took us in the van. The van's kind of old, beat up, kind of a cargo type of van almost, with a bench seat in it. No big deal. I mean, we don't care about being too comfortable. We do have our limits though sometimes. So what we did find out about this van is that unfortunately the starter wouldn't work on it. So if you know anything about standard vans that have a clutch on them, you can push the van and pop it to jump start it like that. You got to know to do that. And so the van wouldn't start unless we got behind the van and pushed it.
Well,
and then we'd jump it. But the guys that were driving us,
they didn't understand.
They didn't understand. They didn't know how to do that.
They didn't know how to pop the clutch.
Right, and so I had to get in there first. I think Steve, Robert, he maybe did that. But
the best part is when they were behind the wheel and we're pushing. We're like, pop the clutch, and he's just coasting.
Yeah. So after we get our
pop the clutch,
after we get our exercise in, we're pushing the thing.
He's just coasting down. I'm holding the steering wheel. No, we're like, pop the clutch.
Yeah, no, he didn't understand. He did not understand. And so the thing that it happens, man. So whatever. We even laughed at it about that even then, even though it wasn't funny. It's not funny because our trips were like, I mean, literally 20 hours to drive to Germany in that van, and it was not a comfortable van. But what sucked about that is we drove overnight, and the thing is basically you couldn't turn the van off, because if you did turn the van off, then you could start it, but you'd have to get everybody out, push it, and then pop the clutch, and then get everybody back in the van. And man, I'll never forget, we were driving overnight. We were somewhere in Switzerland. And the guy stopped at a little store, and everybody was sort of halfway crashed out, but I was halfway awake. He stopped at the store, and I'm in the back, and I see him reach to turn the van off, like, Delta! And he turned it off. I'm like, dude, it's like 4:30 in the morning, everybody's asleep. The last thing we really want to have to do is get out and push this van to start it. But we did, and so that sucked, man. That was terrible. So here's what's funny about that, though, too. Of course, we got through it. So a couple months ago, I was attending Hell's Heroes Festival here in Texas with Camel Mass. I was lucky enough to be working that festival with the Camel Mass guys. So I'm hanging out there all day and working it. And I go out into the main room just for a few minutes to look for somebody or something. Anyway, this guy comes up to me. He goes, John. And I'm like, of course I'm going to know a lot of people there. There's a lot of my friends there, a lot of people I know are there. So I realized I was going to know some. It's not a surprise that somebody's calling my name because I know people there. He said, John, do you remember me? And I recognized him right away. I knew exactly who he was, but he kept on. He goes, I'm Giancarlo from Italy. He goes, I'm the one that you guys did with the van. And I said, dude, I totally remember you. And he went on to apologize for me. That happened in 2007, mind you, like 15 years ago. And he went and goes, John, I'm so sorry about that. I'm so ashamed still of that day. And I'm just laughing, going, dude, this is not a problem, man. That we think it's funny. But what a trip. I actually saw that guy again. Man. He came up to me and goes, do you remember who I am? I'm the guy that and he went on to apologize. I'm so sorry. Still like 15 years later, man. But anyway, that's a funny story, and it seems kind of small, but god dang, man, when you got to get out and push a freaking ass fan. What you guys don't really know, too, is we ended up playing Keep It True in Germany. We drove up in that van from Italy. When we got there, we did the gig. Steve was deadly ill, man.
There's enough there for another episode.
There was, but I'll touch on this. The van, you couldn't stop it. I had to take Steve back to the hotel after we played because he was super sick. You got to know where we're at. The streets are tiny. If you've been in some of these country towns in Germany, they're basically one-lane streets. And of course, I didn't have a GPS or anything. I had to take Steve home in that van. I couldn't figure out how to get back because there was no roads where I could do a turnaround. All the roads were straight, and they're very small roads. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I've got to figure out how to turn back around and go down this main street before I get lost. Well, I kept driving and driving and driving. There was no place to freaking turn around, man. Like, there was no place, and I could see for, looks like another few miles. I'm like, holy crap, man. And here's the thing. If this van stops or stalls, I'm screwed. And I don't got a phone or nothing, and I'm out in the country.
Oh, man.
So I had to turn around in this guy's farm. Like, it was on the side of the road. The guy had farm land here. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. I just went, and I just turned around the poor guy's field and just made a U-turn right there and then went back on that one-lane road. I was thinking, man, I don't know how I'm going to get back to our place here because this road is never ending and I can't stop the van and I can't seem to turn around. So that van was the worst van.
Yeah, there's more stories
about the van. Anyway, that was a good one. So yeah,
we'll get to more.
I think we're running long on that though.
We were running long.
Master of Ceremonies.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us at Solitude Origins on our podcast. Remember to like us.
Yep.
To share us, I forgot what it was.
Subscribe.
There you go.
Get to subscribe.
I'd like to thank
Remember
you
to
for
subscribe.
watching.
Absolutely.
And you for watching. Next time, you should pay more attention over there.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Kurt.
subscribe. What the?
Subscribe. Subscribe.